Hello, sunshine. So, I have been putting off this blog post and video for a while. It's actually pretty literally the last minute. I just wrote this, and obviously I'm recording it, and then I have to edit it, and it's close to midnight on Saturday, and this is for Sunday at 5. So cutting it a bit closer than usual. The fact that I'm really, really uncomfortable talking about this probably means that I should try talking about this. I know that's not always the case, but I feel like it is here. And just a quick intro for anyone new here. Hi, I'm Lauren. My father died suddenly this year, and basically, I'm trying to come to terms with the fact we've had kind of a troubled or contentious relationship for a while. We were in the process of reconciling, and then in a split second, it was all over, and we never got that chance. Not totally. So, if you like self help, which I got into very early because of my dad, and journaling. Actually, journaling is also one of his things. Or just talking about and trying to learn from difficult familial relationships. Welcome. I am endeavoring to be as open and honest as possible, even though I kind of hate it and want to crawl out of my skin. It should be an interesting journey. I'd love it if you follow along, if you'd like to. Here goes. I want to give a little backstory. I've been doing this is week 15 for me, but I felt like I was too kind of like robotic before. So I'm trying to open up and be as honest as possible. If you watched last week's, I'm trying to be open about our relationship, but this isn't a gotcha thing. Like, no crimes, no whatever. It's just, our relationship. So, anyway, here goes. When I was born, I was well, I wasn't told when I was born, but when I was born, my dad referred to me as his good luck charm. He always told me that as a kid, that I was his good luck charm. He changed the name of his business to incorporate my name into it right around the time I was born, maybe a little after. And by the time I was 2 years old, there would be no denying that I am definitely my father's daughter. Not just like we both have blonde hair and blue eyes, but like my smile is the same, my earlobes, my hands, like it's weird. We have a lot of similarities. Looking back, there really was a ton of good in my childhood. Like, I was lucky in so many ways. So this isn't to come across as like, oh, poor me or anything like that. There is a ton of good. But talking about the good stuff isn't really where you learn and kind of deal with things. So mostly I'm going to be focusing on the stuff that wasn't so good. I hope you can understand that, but I definitely will say I had lots of good in my childhood. One of the places that things weren't that good was kind of my development of any sort of like self-esteem. My dad picked on my weight pretty consistently, but in kind of like a backhanded way. So I was always on edge about it, feeling like there was something wrong with me. Now, as in like now, I'm thinking it was more his own insecurities that he was projecting on me. But at 7, that was not apparent, at least to me. So I kind of ended up with a couple of sort of insane fears. Like, I had a fear of being like too fat, which I know is a real problem in the world right now. And I could go off on a tangent about that, but that's for another day. I was afraid that I was going to be like so fat that I couldn't fit into places. Like, I was afraid to go in those crawl through playground things because I thought I'd get trapped and like no one could get me out. It's crazy looking back at it and looking at pictures of me from that age, but that was what went through my mind. He also had the habit of telling me that kind of, oh, that's really good. But it was always, I should be doing more. I was never quite working hard enough or smart enough because if I was, then I would be doing better. And it felt like the goalpost just continued to move further and further away. When I hit puberty and started kind of thinking for myself a little bit, becoming more of my own person, he really started being pretty hard on me when I disagreed with him. I think because he was like the sun, the moon, and the stars when I was little. The fact that I would disagree with him was like a shock to the system. Now, to be fair, I was a teenager, and teenagers are dumb. No matter how smart they are, they don't have the same experience adults do. Although the things that they think might seem right, they haven't experienced it, so they don't. They're. It's just teenagers are dumb. You know, we all think we're the smartest people ever as teens, and then it's like, oh, wait, now I've lived in the world. I'm sure a lot of the things that I disagreed with him about probably were silly, or maybe I was wrong about some of them. And, maybe it was also I was more modern. He was born in 1951, I was born in 1979. There's a difference. But he got very offended when I didn't agree with pretty much everything he did or said. Around this time is also when my parents split up. There's a lot of stuff going on with kind of like their divorce on both sides, but that's not really what I'm getting into here because it doesn't really matter. It's they both had their reasons and that's for them. But there is something that's really significant for me that happened at this time, and that's basically my dad was very much like a family man, but that was our immediate family, like the four of us. They had some friends, like couple friends, and he had someone he played racquetball with, and obviously people he worked with, but he really, like, it really was the four of us. When my parents got a divorce, dad lost his main confidant, which was my mother. Since I was older at that point, like, I was a freshman in high school, on to be a sophomore in high school, I was kind of on the precocious, talk to a lot of adults sort of weird child. So he kind of like just slotted me into my mom's position really without me realizing it. And he might not have realized it either. I definitely don't think it was something malicious. At the time, I was really proud, thinking like I'm so adult that my dad wants to talk to me about like all this stuff and everything he's going through. But in reality, and it took me a really long time to see this, it's pretty much the naming is terrible, but it's pretty much emotional incest. Not a crime, just like a lot of uncomfortableness. I was the one to hear about his girlfriend troubles and talk business and all of that kind of personal stuff that he was dealing with. And unfortunately, in practical terms, it meant most of our one on one time was spent talking about his stuff. When I tried to tell him what was going on with me, he kind of treated it as trivial since I was in high school. And yes, it probably was mostly trivial, but that was what was important to me at that age, so it didn't seem trivial to me. Also, the constant talking about and like comparison of his different girlfriends and dates basically all these different women talking about how they looked and what they're like and this, that, and the other really was not healthy for me. I kind of tried to insulate myself in a very teenage slash childish way, which is I sort of ended up having a lot of teen versions of a tantrum. I would yell at him, and I said I hated him a couple of times, and I actually feel guilty about that because I don't think I did. I think I didn't know how to express how uncomfortable and like how much I didn't want to do this. I'm sure it was really not fun for anybody, including, my brother who sometimes was there, my mom who I'm sure heard about it. So, yeah, it wasn't great. I do actually want to be clear about something. I was kind of an amazing teenager. I think my brother was too. And I think most of the people I was close friends with were. Certainly me and one of my best friends at the time, we never got in any trouble. I know that I did all of my studying and schoolwork without any, influence or interference from my parents. I got up, got ready, had breakfast, went to the bus, without any, like, it was never like, oh my God, you're late for the bus. No, that never happened. I worked 1 day a week all through school at his restaurant, and then like 5 days a week during the summers. I saved a lot of my money from Christmases and from working and all that kind of stuff. So for the most part, I ended up buying a lot of the stuff that I wanted for myself because I made enough money to do so. At the time, it was mostly comic books, honestly. Yet, my dad consistently told me I was a rotten and ungrateful child, upgraded to a bitch by my senior year of high school, which is really not great. So I carried like a ton of guilt about it for a really long time. Probably still am to a certain extent, which is why I'm here. So, yay. But a friend of mine from all the way back then, we were talking a few years ago, and we were kind of having this conversation, probably because I had had a fight with my dad over the phone. And she basically said that our parents had no concept of how good they had it. She probably knew more about the scandals going on in our high school than I did. So she knew what was happening with some other kids. And I mean, we were goody two shoes, like, seriously. So, on top of all of the cool stuff and working and all of that, no drugs, no smoking, no drinking, very, very limited boys, no partying. I was boring. I was very boring. I was super boring. Basically, certainly I feel like this, and I kind of feel like for her as well. Like, we were both like little Roombas. You plug us in for a while, we recharge, and you let us go, and we just do what we need to do. Very little interference. The other thing happening at this time was I was starting to plan my future about going into and then taking over his business. It had been with me for a while, and this was the time I started giving up on other ideas of like things that I could start working for. Not the best plan, I don't think. But again, in high school, you don't know, so it's really hard to tell. He never told me specifically to follow in his footsteps. In fact, sometimes he would say, like, oh, you definitely don't want to do this. But he was always super happy and would tell people that I'm gonna, take over the business, and started really kind of planning for me to go into business with him and then, take it over. The expectation was that my brother did not want to. Literally said basically over his dead body. So both my father and I really had no expectation of Jason wanting to go into the business at that point. So what ended up happening is this kind of sucks. I can see why some people would say this is really good, but in my view, it ended up, I don't think, working well for me. My dad was always very much a show your love with money. kind of guy. So he'd use his money kind of a little bit as a weapon when he was angry, as a comfort when he was guilty. It sends a lot of kind of mixed messages, or it did for me at the very least. What ended up happening at that point was if, say, he got something for my brother that was like out of the realm of like normal, quote unquote, normal, whatever things, and I'm not talking like a pack of gum. I'm talking about like he does something big. I'd say, well, quid pro quo. He would start saying, well, you're going to get the business. I'm basically going to be paying you with the business. So it makes sense that I do more for your brother because you get this business. And then occasionally he'd throw in that since I'm a girl, he's paying for my wedding and not my brother's. I got that quite a bit. By the time I left high school, my personal value, like within my own head, was very much tied to what my father thought of me and how much money I was making, and neither of which really served me in years to come. I'm going to stop here because this has been kind of grueling and I still have to edit. I will come back next week with part two. I hope you have an amazing day, and until I see you next time, I hope you live, laugh, and shine. Bye.